Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for being here this evening. My name is Tom Bonner. I'm the Recovery Officer for Montgomery County. We are fortunate this evening to be joined by many people on the Zoom and several people in the room. Among them, George Cho, the Philip J. Sutton Memorial Foundation, who is going to take this from here.
Good evening. Again, my name is George Che, co-chair of the Asian American Coalition and president and CEO of the Jason Center. We're happy to partner with the Montgomery County Recovery Office tonight. This is the third one in a series of a presentation being provided by this office on the topic of American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA, which is a very important fund for the county. The first one was done for English-speaking populations, and the second one was for Spanish community. This one tonight is meant to include all Asian American community. As you know, Asian population in the Montgomery County accounts for 7.9% and growing fast. But we're diverse, and we have over 10 different languages. So out of respect for the whole community members, we decide to do it in English. And that will also help those folks who missed the first two. As community requests their own language in a small group, we'll be happy to plan that. I hope you would enjoy tonight's presentation, but on behalf of Asian American community, I would like to thank the Montgomery County office for reaching out to us. It's a fantastic and to building a partnership with the county. At this time, I would like to invite Sharon Hart to introduce tonight's speakers. Thank you.
Sharon, I think you're good to go.
Thank you, George and Tom. Good evening, everyone. I am Sharon Hart, president of the Korean American Association of Greater Philadelphia. We are greatly appreciate Montgomery County for providing this town hall with information and guidelines to diverse community. We have two county officers to introduce tonight. First, Barbara OMalley, Chief Operating Officer. She will give us a brief introduction for the ARPA program, and I'd like to share a little bit of her bio with everyone. Barbara has been working for Montgomery County for 25 years. She began her career as a data analyst in the health department and has had various roles, including community health facilitator, human services coordinator, and was the first director of health and human services for the county. She currently serves as a deputy chief operating officer, assisting in all facets of county operations. She is a lifelong Montgomery County resident and is dedicated to serving the people of Montgomery County. We have next Tom Bonner, Recovery Officer. Tom has worked for Montgomery County, Pennsylvania since 2016, having joined as a county's capital project program director overseeing complex capital construction initiatives. In 2018, Tom assumed the position of director of Department of Assets and Infrastructure, restructuring the department to include management of capital construction initiative, along with the county's physical road, bridge, park, trail, historic site, facility, and buildings infrastructure. He has served in the recovery officer capacity since September 2021. And Tom will lead the presentation, but please join me welcoming Barbara OMalley, Chief Operating Officer first.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm Barbara OMalley, the Deputy Chief Operating Officer for Montgomery County, and I want to thank everyone for attending this evening. I want to especially thank Sharon Hartz, George Che, Solomon Kim, and Dr. Francis J. Raj for their assistance in getting so many people to help participate this evening and providing some promotion for the event. So thank you. We are committed to an open, transparent, and equitable process for the distribution of the American Rescue Plan Act funding. Since our last town hall, our Recovery Office team has been hard at work to understand the regulations of this funding, to develop a submission process, incorporate community feedback, develop an objective scoring system, and identifying resources to assist residents and organizations to submit thoughtful, impactful projects for funding. We want to hear from all of our residents and as many of our diverse populations as possible. And we know that there are many organizations out there that are not familiar with applying for federal funding, government funding, or even just expressing their ideas on how the government should spend their dollars. And we are looking for help from you to understand what your needs are and to help build back Montgomery County even better than it was before. We've included a partnership with a technical assistance provider who's going to help our entities if you have language barriers, technology barriers, or just any questions about how you might be able to help provide input and projects for funding. The county is also working with partners, and we're hopeful to have partnership meetings that people can come together to share ideas on how best to work together to spend these dollars in benefit of the entire county. We're also going to continue our outreach to all different populations through our community partnerships and also in working with Here For Us, an organization that's been critical in reaching out to diverse populations. Our goal since the beginning is to ensure equitable opportunity and voice for the use of this funding. And your participation and feedback is critical. And we're pleased to share with you tonight our next step about our submission process and look forward to seeing your projects and ideas to help work together. Looking forward to hearing from Tom Bonner to share with you this next step in the process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. OMalley. I am going to share my screen here. We're going to go through a presentation that is meant to describe the process by which we are interested in collecting your ideas for this program. We will have ample time for questions and answers at the end of the presentation. We look forward to a productive dialogue then. So I'm going to share my screen here. Tonight, we will go through the process by which we want to collect your ideas. We want to first establish some background about what the American Rescue Plan Act is. We will go through what can be submitted, who can do that, what eligible projects are, how the submission process and how, as Barbara mentioned, our technical assistance provider can be accessed. We'll go through the portal through which the projects are submitted, and we'll talk briefly about compliance for anyone who's then funded after that. The American Rescue Plan Act was signed into law on March 11th, 2021, and allocated $1.9 trillion across multiple programs nationwide. Many of these programs have been received by different aspects of our Montgomery County community, school districts. Our emergency rental assistance is being overseen and dispensed as we speak. The state and local fiscal recovery funds, or SLFRF, established a $350 billion allocation, which was then again distributed across the United States to states, localities, non-entitlement units of government, and tribal governments. For example, the Pennsylvania state allocation was $7.3 billion. That is entirely independent from our Montgomery County allocation of a $161.4 million. This program, the process you're about to hear about tonight, and our work to ensure that we build a program of projects that represents the fulfillment of the opportunity that this funding presents, is focused on that allocation, the $161.4 million. We want to be a resource in the Recovery Office to the community, and we look forward to collaborating on multiple initiatives. For the purposes of this conversation tonight, we're speaking about those pandemic recovery funds as we refer to them. What can be submitted? The county needs to understand from you what is important, what you have already been working on, and what may only be conceptual but has potential. Submissions fall into two main categories: projects and ideas. A project is a fully developed program, service, or initiative for the county to fund. The submission process will require projects to include a justification, financial and operational plans, and an explanation of the management structure for the project. Our team, you're going to hear from several of them this evening, will analyze and vet these submissions. We will score them using a uniform assessment rubric, which will be posted on our website. And approved projects will be adopted into our Montgomery County Recovery Plan. The Recovery Plan document is the list of all of the projects that will be funded using the Pandemic Recovery Fund allocation. At the same time, we are interested in collecting ideas. An idea communicates to the county a suggested focus for the expenditure of pandemic recovery funds as a priority or as a conceptual plan. It does not require the same level of information as a project. It does not have a funding request. It does not constitute a funding request and may not ever necessarily become a project. We are interested in hearing what is important. So those ideas, I want to see more investment in housing affordability. I want to see a community center, but that doesn't mean there's a project there. We will take that into account and may refer to relevant partners to explore that further. Ideas can be submitted through the Recovery Office website portal beginning Monday, February 28th. That's this upcoming Monday. So we look forward to hearing from you. I'm going to go through how that portal works. Ideas are submitted in the same place we are collecting projects. And it's important that we understand what the good ideas that are out there that can be funded with this and that may not be able to, but will be able to be funded with future funding programs. Who can submit? Nonprofit organizations, community groups, individuals, school districts, municipal and county governments, fiscal sponsors, faith groups, and for-profit businesses are all encouraged to submit. Put simply, anyone can submit a project or an idea. If you are submitting a project, any entity submitting a project, that requests funding, meaning you are requesting to receive funding from this allocation and you will manage it, you become a subrecipient. To do that, you need to be capable of managing this project. The flexibility of this program is such that we are happy to take projects that our partners are interested in managing themselves. They have the fiduciary responsibility. They understand how to make projects happen. We are also happy to take projects that are being submitted for the county to manage or for the county to arrange to manage. I say that because it is important that we receive all types of projects, fully baked, ready to go. I have this ready, and please help me do this. So we're looking for both of those. Our Recovery Office staff will vet organizational capability to inform how we fund projects that are submitted. I am going to turn this over to Ms. Emma Hertz to speak to the project priorities that will dictate how we score and how we prioritize the projects that are submitted.
Good evening, everyone, and thanks, Tom. My name is Emma Hertz. I'm the Strategy Director for the Recovery Office, and I'm really excited to be joining you all this evening to talk about our funding priorities and eligibility requirements for the projects submitted through the Pandemic Recovery Fund. We have been, as Barbara had mentioned in the beginning of the presentation, we've been focusing on deep community engagement throughout this process to understand how the residents of Montgomery County envision this funding being spent. And to that end, we have identified a number of community priorities that we are building into our funding process so that the investments made through this fund are most responsive to community need. And so here we have already identified 5 main issue areas that the community has identified for us to prioritize through this funding. Those priorities, generally speaking, are investing in affordable housing, addressing mental health and behavioral health care services, supporting childcare, supporting public health emergency response, and increasing digital access. Second, we are also hearing a call for a priority around projects that specifically target and are informed by historically underserved communities. And given our coalition tonight with our connection tonight with the Asian American Coalition, it's very clear that the Asian American populations across Montgomery County are considered an underserved population. And we are hoping to prioritize and target projects that specifically are serving that and other communities that have been most deeply impacted by the pandemic or have been historically excluded from receiving these kinds of government funds in the past. Third, we are also interested in projects that provide a direct response to impacts of the pandemic. And then finally, looking at projects that have the potential for long-term transformative impact. Given the flexibility of this funding, the one-time nature of it, some have even called it a once-in-a-generation opportunity for new kinds of funding because of that flexibility and deep investment. We're really looking at using this funding source in a novel way in the community. And so when we think about having a transformative impact through these funds, we think about projects that have the potential to address root cause issues in our community, most likely that these underserved communities have experienced in the past, or projects that address systemic barriers to achieving economic opportunity or overall well-being. And here as well, we're really looking at prioritizing projects that are having an impact at a neighborhood, a community, or a broader level, as opposed to projects that are providing assistance at an individual or family level. I do want to stress, though, that while these are priorities of the county and our scoring will reflect that, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, these are not the only kinds of projects that can be funded. And indeed, if there are other projects that are meaningful to your community and that are needed by your community, we're encouraging you to submit those projects as well. These projects or projects that are in line with these priorities would simply receive a slightly higher priority through our process. So moving on to eligibility. There are a number of different kinds of projects that are eligible to be funded through the Pandemic Recovery Fund. Generally speaking, we won't go into too much detail here tonight, but these are projects that respond to the public health emergency. Things like vaccination programs, contact tracing, public health data programs, things like that. Second, projects can also respond to negative economic impacts, which may include direct aid to families and workers, supporting small businesses through loans or grant programs, supporting industries that have been particularly impacted by the pandemic, addressing health disparities and social determinants of health. Third, replacing lost public sector revenue is an eligible expense under this grant program. Fourth, providing premium pay for essential workers, particularly those who are on the front lines during the pandemic and have the most contact with the public. And then finally, investing in water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. So these are all the different types of eligibility. We have or will have more information available up on our website very soon regarding specifics for each of these types of projects and the eligibility requirements for each of those. Finally, all projects do have eligibility requirements as well, regardless of the type of project that it is. First is that all costs must be incurred between March 3rd, 2021 and December 31st of 2026. That means that projects must be fully implementable within that time period. And then finally, this is a one-time only funding source. And so when we're evaluating projects, we are also looking to see if this project intends to continue beyond the end of 2026, how is it going to be sustained from a funding perspective? And are you building that thinking into your project plan?
Thank you, Emma. At this time, I'm actually going to turn this over to Eli Gilman, our process manager in the Recovery Office, for the next few slides.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I am Eli Gilman, the process manager for the Recovery Office. Tom, if you could hit the next slide for me. Tom, thanks. So I'm going to start by taking a minute or two just to talk about the project's submission process. As Emma mentioned, the portal will open on Monday, February 28th. This is the same for the project submission as well, but there is no benefit for applying early. Please take your time and prepare before you make your submission. The portal will be open through April 30th, so you'll have ample time to put your project submission together. So as you're getting ready, please make sure to review all of the documents, the instructions, the FAQs on the Recovery Office website. We will also have a Word version of the application process for you to fill in and then copy and paste into the submission portal. Make sure that you have all of your plans developed, any relevant documents, you have your implementation schedule and timeline down. If you're going to be working with any partner organizations, make sure you take some time to coordinate with them on the submission. And as Barbara mentioned, we will have a technical assistance provider available, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in the next slide. Once you're ready to submit your project proposal, you'll start at the Recovery Office website at www.montcopa.org/recovery office. There you'll find a link to go to our submission portal. And again, throughout the process, there will be technical assistance if you have any issues. Once you've submitted your proposal, the Recovery Office will review it. We'll make sure that it is all eligible under the ARPA guidelines and as well as the county priorities. And we will forward it along to a team of reviewers who will evaluate it along the metrics that Tom and Emma mentioned, and I'll also go over those in a little bit more detail a little later. Once we have all of the projects scored and evaluated, the county management team will review them and determine which projects will be part of the draft recovery plan. As Tom mentioned, that is basically the list of all of the projects that we will fund and any plans for any unspent funds at that time. It's quite possible that we spend all 161 million through this process. It's also possible that we reserve some of that funding for a later round or for other projects that the county wants to do. We will then take public feedback on that draft plan, implement that, and adopt a final plan in June. At the time, we'll contact all of the project submitters who are part of this process to discuss funding agreements, to discuss subrecipient agreements, and determine any issues related to compliance and reporting. Next slide, Tom. As we mentioned, there's technical assistance available to you throughout this process. We really want to make sure that there are absolutely no obstacles, no barriers to participating in the submission process. We want all of your ideas and projects. This is a free service. There's absolutely no charge for it, and assistance is available in multiple languages like Spanish, Korean, Mandarin, Chinese, and others. So please take advantage of this service. The technical advisor will be available via phone, via email, via text. There are other direct support options. All of that information will be available on our website. And what can you use the technical assistance provider for? Well, you can use it for general support. If you have technical questions, if you need some help answering the questions, if you need some more explanation about the process or to help navigate the application system, they can also review your proposal, your project submission to make sure that it's complete. They can provide some training on how to craft a clear and effective proposal. They can provide some assistance in finding supporting data to help you with some of your questions. The county will also have some of these resources available on the county website, but please also use the technical assistance provider if you need some more. As I mentioned, they will be able to assist in other languages, and they're also there to help any applicants with any disabilities or impairments. And now, how do you actually submit a project? As I mentioned, you'll go to the montcopa.org website. On the Recovery Office page, you will see a link to submit an idea or project. From there, that will take you directly into the OpenGov platform where you can make your project or idea submission. You will be prompted to create a profile, which will allow you to check on the status of your project or idea submission. It'll also allow you to create multiple projects or ideas and have them all grouped together under your profile. The things that you will need in order to have a complete project submission, You will need a budget that includes all eligible expenses, a schedule and time frame that goes no longer than December 31, 2026. Have an understanding of what metrics you're going to use to assess the performance of your project, a complete description, a discussion of the management structure, and complete justifications and other relevant supporting data. And I'll pause just for a second here to reiterate what Tom said earlier about the management structure. We do really envision all types of projects coming in, so please provide us with your projects, whether or not you will be requesting to handle the funds yourselves, whether you would like to partner with the county, whether you would like the county to take the project on in its entirety. All of those are options. So I'll take just a minute to talk about our assessment rubric. As Barbara and Tom and Emma all alluded to, this is an objective and clear and transparent assessment rubric. We took in all of the feedback that we received from the ARPA town halls, from the survey of Montgomery County residents, from direct responses from community partners, and synthesize that into this assessment. And we've broken the rubric down into 3 sections looking at ARPA intent, project viability, and county priorities. This will be published on our website beginning tomorrow. So please take a look if you want to see how all of the criteria are defined and how each score is determined. And finally, I'll talk just a little bit about the reporting and compliance. We at Montgomery County are the sole recipient for this particular grant allocation from the federal government. As such, we are responsible for all of the quarterly and annual reports through the end of the performance period, which again is December 2026. The Recovery Office staff will be here to help coordinate this reporting, and we'll be leaning on all of the project leads to help us with this, whether they're internal to the county, if they're county-run projects, whether they're external to the county, if we'll be partnering with you to fulfill this project. And please be aware, though, that if performance targets aren't met, the Recovery Office is there as a resource to help you manage any problems that arise. But if we can't manage those issues, that may result in a redirection of resources or a recoupment of funding. And finally, I'll just say one thing again. We mentioned the word subrecipient a few times. And this just basically means if you are the fiduciary responsible for the funding of this project, of your project, we will work with you directly in this reporting process because you will have additional compliance guidelines that we will have to fulfill. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you, Eli. That was helpful. So from here, next steps from the Recovery Office's perspective to get this process moving, we are, as Eli just mentioned, updating our Recovery Office website through tomorrow. We are conducting additional town hall presentations focused on this submission process through the end of March. In coordination with people that you've heard from this evening, Ms. Hartz, Mr. Che, Dr. Japor, we are focused on making sure that we conduct meetings throughout this month with the Asian American Coalition to be sure that we come to facilities and to meetings that allow us to reach this community and make sure we are gaining input from you. Our submission process for ideas and projects, as you've heard from us several times, opens Monday, February 28th, and will be open through the end of April. Technical assistance will be available the entire time and can be accessed through our website, as Mr. Gilman mentioned. At this time, we're going to begin our question and answer. As it says here and as it says in the chat, and I see that there are already some questions and answers submitted through the Q&A function in the Zoom. In-person attendees here in the room will come to the podium to ask questions. If you are on the Zoom, you can type your question into the Q&A box and we'll either type an answer, we'll answer it live here. Or alternatively, you can also raise your hand and ask to be unmuted using the raise your hand feature. With that, I will move this over. So I will start actually with anyone here in the room that wanted to ask a question or, sure, if you don't mind just coming up here.
Oh, sure. So,
That's okay.
yeah, I'm Easton from Jason Home Healthcare. It's wonderful to hear. I'm just so exciting. I'm the older time healthcare worker. Like when I hear like, oh, this is almost quality metrics kind of assessment tools to me, and it always has to be data driven, has to be objective. But it's a good thing about it. Always I'm trying to collect the data by myself, analysis by myself. But here they say technical assistance. What a great to meet library to access, right? So it truly, when we do a lot of clinics, we have a lot of own data, but sometimes I wanted to compare to other population or all the data. So how much will we be able to access? Really, whatever requested, then county will be allowed to help us, whatever we wanted the data relate to our
That's a
project.
great question.
Because that's what I say, oh my gosh, that's why I say library, we have a library here. So like a database. So we'll be all allowed to?
Sure. And I'm just gonna, this is gonna be a little weird.
Alright.
You're gonna move over. I'm gonna
Okay.
stay, you don't have to sit down though.
Okay.
So I just wanted to answer that question directly because that is a feature of not only our technical assistance provider, but also from our website. So we have in the county every day, we have a data repository that is maintained across multiple offices. We will provide resources to link to that from our website. We will provide additional data sources through our website. At the same time, one of the pieces of the technical assistance scope, and by technical assistance, again, you are able to access them via phone, email, they
Yeah,
actually have
everything.
text, right?
Yeah.
They will help you define and find data. They have their own libraries of data, to your point, that is able to help support projects, right? To help support ideas, to make sure that you're able to justify
Yeah.
the concepts that you're putting forth. So that's an important question and it's a great one. We will make available data through our website. Our technical assistance provider will help you directly to find data that helps to support what you're looking to do.
Yeah, that's like, I mean, to me, it's like back in the school year, when I just writing project.
Oh, I'm sorry,
An
I'm sorry.
article, something, all the time I just get a proposal.
Mhm.
And then over time, I go to the professor, am I doing right corrections? Over time I get, so is it right kind of things? I feel like I'm more feel comfortable to can like that. We are not just a separate individual project, we just get along together. So to help them Montgomery County, like development, so that's why like I feel much more feel comfortable. I just kind of trying to figure it out. So I think we are kind of partnership rather than like individual project to going on. So I really appreciate, very interesting. And to me, like I'm back into school again. Yeah, so I
And
think it's very
actually,
interesting.
I'm going to use another question you
Yeah.
asked as an opportunity. Ms. Hertz and actually Ms. OMalley at the beginning did mention part of the work that the Recovery Office will do, and you heard a lot about our direct responsibilities with respect to the process and bringing in ideas. We are also looking to be sure that good ideas are then put together, right? So we have an incubation effort in progress now that we will be pushing things that either don't fit within our funding are needing to be paired together. So there will be that resource available too, is sort of what I'm also saying.
It's great. Just hear you feel
Sure.
great, yeah.
No, I appreciate that. Any other questions from, yeah, sure, please. Oh, sure, yeah, absolutely.
I'm Francis J. Raj. I'm the co-chair of the Asian American Coalition along with George. We did have a meeting with Tom and others earlier today. And obviously, we are very excited that the Asian American community's needs are being addressed. I think for the first time, Tom, as I understand. So thank you very much. The Asian Americans are almost like 8% of Montgomery County and growing. And one of the things that Tom, that we talked about is the Asian American community. And like others, they may not actually be fully aware of the opportunities that are available, that is right now. And they may not even feel comfortable or be aware how to apply. So that's always a lot of handholding that is necessary. And one of the things that Tom agreed, maybe you can corroborate afterwards, that this group from the county, they would be willing to go to other places, ethnic places such as, the Hindu temple, could be the mosque and other places directly. Where also, I think this group from the county, it's important that they go and actually see how the other groups are right where they live. Thank you.
Thank you. And just to reiterate, I do want to stress that we are interested and have been working with this group to be sure that we are finding those places, and we will do that in the coming weeks and months. I appreciate that. Any other? Sure, please. I'm sorry, I'm also just paying attention to what's going on in the Q&A, so I didn't mean to be distracted. Please go ahead.
Hi, I'm Grace Kim and CFO of Jason Center. First, I want to thank you to Montgomery County for giving us this time and place aside, making extra effort to reach to us, and I really appreciated that. I'm a CFO, so I'm like concerned about the numbers and the reporting part.
Sure.
Are these these aid fund considered federal grants?
Mhm.
So are we going to be subject to single audit if we get it?
So so this is an important question. The county is the recipient of these funds, so we are subject to single audit. If you are designated as a subrecipient, you will be obligated to participate with us, but it will be more from a sampling perspective. You will be on the hook for compliance with the grants common rule, right? So the federal rules around how grant funding is managed and procurement. And that's actually where, not just from a compliance perspective, but also from as the projects get submitted, right? And so this is what Eli mentioned and I mentioned, that there is this unique piece of this funding where we are a recipient. We can designate and give funding to subrecipients if they are directly managing programs, expending money, working through procurements, doing management of funding themselves. We can also be the manager of the funding and work with partners that may not be a subrecipient because they're not getting funding, but we are facilitating completion of the projects that would be put forth. So in the context of.
So we don't have to go out, get single audit.
Correct. We would be that you would simply be a participant in the single audit process, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Because we would be looking, they would be sampling records from you as a subrecipient expense. And so we would come to you. But again, we manage all the compliance. So all the reporting comes through the recovery office. We also are submitting the quarterly reports. We are submitting the annual reports, and we are engaging the
Okay.
single audit.
Because I was concerned about
Sure.
there'll be added cost for us and work for us in addition to whatever program that we're.
No,
Yeah.
and that's an important
Yeah.
distinction.
Yes.
The idea of this funding, and I mean, from the highest level, county management, Barbara OMalley, our Deputy Chief Operating Officer, our Chief Operating Officer, there's a commitment that we maximize the allocation of that funding pot that we have, 161.4 million, to program. So for instance, already the recovery office staff is not funded from this grant program. And so I'm saying that now because to minimize the overhead costs that are pushed on to subrecipients that are done by the county, we want to be sure that we're putting as much as we can into the program.
And I also saw like our quarterly reporting requirements to the county too, so.
So,
the-
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So we would be coordinating that quarterly report. As the recipient, the recovery office as the county, submit the quarterly report to the U.S. Department of the Treasury. To do that, we will be collecting reports from everyone, actually. So you don't actually have to be a subrecipient. If we're partnered with your organization and we are funding, for instance, procurement and contracts, but you are doing the program, we're going to be looking for you for performance metrics check-ins every quarter to be able to submit that as part of the reporting.
Yeah, that reporting
Correct.
requirement that was mentioned,
Exactly.
it's county's reporting requirement or the recipients?
So every recipient will have, and Eli spoke about this in his discussion of the process. After approved projects are identified, we will approach anyone who will be involved in the compliance project. inclusive, of course, of subrecipients who are receiving funding and then are obligated to follow procurement rules and inventory rules and all the grand common rules. We will dispense a manual. We will assist with the management of that. At the same time, anyone running a program that's funded by this, even if, for instance, we are funding contractors directly, will be involved in the compliance process to submit progress reports, and if there are financial obligations, and if there are contract reports. So everyone who submits a project, who's involved with management of projects, will be a part of the quarterly compliance reports.
Okay.
I think pretty much public health. I do the quarterly report, annual report, then the CMS guidelines.
And we collect it, right? So that's the obligation, right?
Okay, second question is, it's personal for one. Are these funds gonna be funded at once, or is it gonna be like partially? I guess it depends on the amount, but.
So that's a great question, actually. And so, again, part of the flexibility of this funding is if there's a time, so for instance, it actually depends more on the project than in anything else. Meaning, if this is for instance, a purchase of land or a purchase of a real estate asset, and it is, we need $0 until we go to closing, and then we need all the money at one time, that's going to be one dispense check. If it's a program by which we are engaged in a long-term 3.5-year construction project, we would be sure to do, your billing, and if we are managing the contract, we're going to pay that contractor as we go. So it honestly depends on the structure of the project.
Okay.
No problem. Any other questions from the room? Sure, Dr. J. Rod, please.
Keep you busy. Okay. A couple of questions. Number one is is any of the fund has to be paid back, or is it a total outright grant? That is first question.
Hmm.
Then the second question is, we are working as an Asian American coalition, and let's say there are 10 members in that coalition. Is the money going to be given to the coalition, or would it be given to separate groups?
So
Because you're talking about the sub-recipients,
Mhm.
I'm not quite sure whether this would fit into that, or each group will be given the money separately.
So that's actually, thank you, Dr. J. Raj. That is a great question. Again, part of this depends on the structure of the project, right? So if, for instance, a coalition submits an effort and they themselves will manage it, then there's a designee, and in the application, it even talks about an organization who is the point, and making sure that it's clear that we are going to be coming through, and meaning we're going to go through a single organization. It's made clear who is the custody of the funds. At the same time, a coalition project could simply be, I don't mean to say simply, but could be one that is organized across multiple organizations that assists the county in managing the financial aspects of the project, meaning we would have the project management capacity to make the project happen, while the coalition helps inform the programmatic direction of what that is. And so I think, just to back up a second to simplify, our role, in addition to facilitating a participatory process, that's paramount, as is making sure that the work that we fund and the projects that are selected, first of all, can happen in the funding timeframe, 3.5 years, and then more importantly, do happen. And so to the extent that we can bring to bear any sort of structure that enables completion of these projects, we certainly will do that. And that's where, as a resource to a coalition submitting a great idea or a great project, we can help be the managers of that, or the coalition can manage it if the capacity is there and the capability and the willingness. Both of those are options under this program. The punchline simply is the project as submitted will be a collaborative effort either way, whether you are, quote, a subrecipient, and that is a grant definition, meaning that you are receiving funding and you have responsibility for the custody of that funding. Or you're not a subrecipient, you're a partner to us as we manage the project as the recipient. I hope that it's a great question. And I think that's part of, as we go, that'll be, yes. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Barbara, for reminding me. Yes, Dr. J. Raj also asked whether it's a grant. So in the context of this program, we have received the grant money. Like the grant is here. We will possibly create grant programs. And I'll use an example to illustrate that. Before I do, the answer is not every fund is like you are a subrecipient of the grant if we are giving you money to fund a project. We also may begin a grant program. So for instance, if we have multiple projects or multiple ideas submitted around, I need a small amount of money to refit my restaurant, to address pandemic mitigation strategies, or because issues happen for whatever reason, we may set up, as the county has done before, a similar type grant program where we would run another sort of competitive process where people can submit proposals for funding in a grant specific environment. So we could make sub grants. That's part of what's allowed under the funding. We can also choose to fund projects, as this process would do. And if part of this process will allow us to understand there is a lot of interest across this very specific area, so that may become a grant program as we move forward. So the answer to your question is today, it isn't necessarily a grant to anyone. You would be a subrecipient of grant funds that have already been made, or we would create another grant program through which people can participate.
Does the money need to be paid back?
That's what I will say. See, for example, if you take a loan,
Mhm.
it's paid back, right?
Oh, I understand.
Interest and so on. That's exactly what
Well, I'm glad, hopefully I didn't say anything incorrectly, but that wasn't your question, is your point. It is not a loan. This money does not have to be paid back. That's an easy one, so I can take that. Yes, exactly. So this is emphatically a grant program that does not mean that there's a loan to be paid back. I'm just going to take a couple of questions from the Q&A. There's a question in here. When people have technical, oh, actually, I should put this up here. My apologies. So I'm going to start here. When people have technical issues like providing language access, who should we contact? Again, this is exactly what the technical assistance provider is for. So on our website, you will have access via multiple methods: phone, text, email, and then there's a direct web portal to our technical assistance provider, who can provide both in-person and remote. They can provide over the phone, via text. You can submit documents via email. Language access, including walking through in multiple languages. As we mentioned, at a minimum, that includes Spanish, Korean, and Mandarin Chinese, but other languages are possible. They have the capacity to provide translation services in multiple languages. Those people should contact, through the website, the technical assistance provider. That is exactly what that service is for. And again, as Eli said, and I do want to stress this because we've gotten this question, there is no charge for you to use the technical assistant. It is a free service. It is designed to remove that barrier to submission. What is the full scope of language service availability? So we did just speak about that. They have the ability to translate into multiple languages. They have listed at a minimum Korean, Mandarin Chinese, and Spanish, but there are other languages that are possible. The slideshow is absolutely available to the public. We will be sending it around and posting this, including the recording of this webinar, on our website. There's a question on here also, what type of outreach have you been doing? So we have been fortunate during in the months that we have engaged in meeting with the community to have met with several organizations. I think, as Dr. Jayraj said, we are interested in making sure we continue to do that and go into other areas and communities that we haven't been to yet. And so I think the type of outreach has been direct, but we recognize that we are interested in making sure that there is a full participation in this process. Will organization, there's a question here. If an organization provides services in Montgomery County, but the official address is not in Montgomery County, may they still apply for funding? Absolutely. There is no, our scoring criteria and our priority is to is to fund projects that serve people who live and work in Montgomery County. There is no requirement that a business has to have an address. The beneficiaries of these projects should be people who live and work in Montgomery County, but we are also interested in making sure that we are coordinating cross-jurisdictionally, which may include work in and with other counties. It may include regional efforts. It may include work across municipalities that may be beyond borders. And so there is not, put simply, please submit any good ideas, right? So those type of things is exactly what we're interested in doing. If we were to reach out for pre-submission review of our proposal, what would be the anticipated turnaround, someone to review our proposal and provide feedback? I would say quickly, but that is exactly what our technical assistance provider will do. So honestly, they would provide it to you exactly as you are submitting it. I don't have a time frame. We can get that for you and we would post that information. But it is, when would be the latest we could request a pre-submission review before the April deadline? I think that honestly depends on some of the responses we get. The technical assistance provider is responsible for having the capacity to deal with many things that come across. At the same time, it's not a limitless bucket. So Eli said, and I stand by what he said, as do we all, there is not a rush to submit this, except when you're talking about, you don't want to get stuck at the end of the day on April 30th, typing as I used to do all my college papers. That's not, we want to be sure that people have the opportunity to make changes and get assistance as needed. So I would say at least allow 2 weeks before the end of the process if there's something that needs to be done there. I think I answered this already about technical issues, that all the email and number will be posted on the website when it goes live on Monday. Can we apply for the fund to use as grants to give? So that is an interesting question. I think what I'm going to have to do is get back to you on that. So we will answer this question when we send it around. I don't want to say the wrong thing, but my inclination is that it is not something we would use to grant someone else to do a sub-grant program. We will confirm that though. Can the money be used to purchase a building for programming? This is, again, I'm just using this question as an opportunity. The answer to the question is, it could be. It matters what the project is. Ms. Hertz, as the strategy director, went through the priorities and the eligibility from the perspective of the county and from the funding. That dictates what the funding can be used for. At a high level, if you are augmenting a program or you're creating a new program, or most importantly, you're creating and changing the capacity of a program to serve a community or a group of people or an increased group of people by increasing a facility through a capital investment or a land purchase, absolutely that hits a lot of the ideal, that makes a project much more ideal because you're talking about a systems change there. So it's a one-time investment of funding, that's a checkbox, that serves a community, that changes the way services are provided, and if the project is framed correctly, doesn't require county ARPA funding to continue working. We build a building, we buy a building through the project, and then the project submitter has a plan for managing it afterwards. That's what we mean when Ms. Hertz talked about making sure that we recognize this is one-time funding. So purchase of a building, absolutely, but the programming is important. You need to come to the table with a plan that makes sure that we understand that you're going to have to maintain that building after this funding is over. Is it possible that part of the request will be funded, or is it all or nothing? Honestly, that depends on our process, and the questions that are asked as part of the intake process allows us to make that that determination as we work through it. And again, this isn't like the door doesn't necessarily shut when you click submit. If we have questions, if there's clarifications, if we need to ask a question, listen, you say you can serve 10,000 people with this amount of money through this program. if we only have X number of dollars and you could serve 5,000, does that work for your program, or is it an all or nothing program from your perspective? So my answer to this is that it isn't an all or nothing program, but it is something that we want to make sense for both of us, right? So if the project is proposed in such a way that is scalable or can be changed, and again, ideally, we are getting many great ideas far beyond the money that we have. And so we will have to make selections, but the concept is that we have this bank of projects that can be implemented with future or different or county funds or nonprofit funds or philanthropic funds as we move forward. And so again, that the truthful answer is there's nothing that makes it all or nothing unless the project does. So there's a question here, will organizations be required to ask for a specific funding amount, or will funding levels be determined by the county after considering the application? The answer to that question is no, organizations will not be required to ask for a specific funding amount. Funding levels could be determined by the county after considering the application, but that's based on availability. So what that means is we would change a funding amount with the cooperation of the project or the idea submitter because we want to do the project, but we don't have enough money, or the project might be better if we could do more. Is that possible? So it's not as if we are just going to say, you ask for 100,000 to do a project that you can't really make work for any less. And we say, well, we're only giving you 20. I mean, that's not how we're going to do this. Unless it is how we're going to do this, but we would be in touch with you to do that. Oh, sorry, I skipped this question from the beginning. Questions on premium pay. So this is a specific question, and we can answer this question in writing, but I think high level, there are definitions in our guidance, and that's part of our process, that those documents are available. As who constitutes essential workers, that's all in the guidance itself. So as you submit the project, those are questions that you can get answered through our website, through our FAQs, through our instruction documents. The question as far as how long would an institution expect this funding to last? Again, to be clear, this is one-time funding. So even in the premium pay category, this is not something where you're increasing someone's salary on an ongoing basis. This is a one-time inflection of funding that in the premium pay sections of this legislation recognizes the work that these essential employees did during this time period, not forever. And so this premium pay aspect is meant to create programs or fund additional, but it's within the time-limited period that's defined by the legislation.
Tom, I can jump in and add something
Sure,
if that's all right.
please do.
So in regards to the premium pay, it is a one-time thing, as Tom mentioned, but it can also be retroactive back to the start of the pandemic. It has to be no more than $13 per hour in addition to what they were already making. It can't include any premium pay that was given to them by their employer. It can't be more than $25,000 per person, and I believe it is no more than it can't make more than $96,500 inclusive of the premium pay, and all of it would have to end, of course, by December 31st, 2026.
And that information that Eli very helpful, that is exactly what's available on our website as you prepare to submit this. So if you have questions, that's the type of thing that is available on the website in the guidance, and that will make available to everyone to be able to see. I think this is an interesting question that's asked, what has the ARPA committee dreamed of for the county, in quotes? What is a guiding vision for the county? Truthfully, the guiding vision for this office and the county's work here is to be sure that the process fulfills the intent of the legislation and that the projects fulfill the intent of the legislation. And so what that means is our vision is to make sure that we do this, we execute this program the right way, we ensure that we are getting community participation and that we're keeping a lens of equity in mind as we look to expend and to engender ideas coming back to us. And so there's no, I do want to be clear, there's not, for instance, a guiding vision that says we're going to do this project specifically. There's a guiding vision that says we want to be, and Emma defined the word transformative. We want to be transformative in the execution of this program. This is a rare opportunity. It is a significant amount of money. It's also not a significant amount of money for what the needs can be. And so I think, truthfully, if I was to summarize, the guiding vision is to make sure we're maximizing the effect of this opportunity that's being provided to us. There's a question here about, sorry, let me just clear this out. Can the money be used for a for-profit business startup? What is the maximum amount we can apply for? So I'll start from the back. There is no maximum amount that you can apply for. I would say that this is the type of project that you can submit. You should be sure that it is in line with the county priorities. Our scoring, which will be posted, our rationale for choosing projects and approving them to be included in the execution of the recovery plan will be posted, will be public. And so there's a lot of, quote, it depends in this question. There's no hard and fast rule that says it can't. If the program is in line with the priorities and it scores well, according to our rubric, it's certainly a project worth submitting. So that concludes what I have in the Q&A. Let me just be sure there's no one with hands up. And certainly if there's anyone in the room that wanted to ask any questions, please feel free. So again, I just want to reiterate, if you are on the Zoom and you want to ask a question live, you're more than welcome. All you have to do is raise your hand. For now, I'm not seeing too many. Oh, sure.
After this meeting,
Mm-hmm.
for the question, Q&A, then will be technical assistance will be on the way to communicate.
Correct. So, and again, that can be accessed directly through the website. Mm-hmm. Yeah, please, Dr. J.
Two questions. One is there any gender preference? For example, if ladies apply, is there any kind of preference you're giving for ladies? So I guess that's the main question I wanted to ask.
I'm sorry, I just want to be sure. You said gender preference, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's no, if I'm understanding the question correctly, which I need to be sure that I am, because I didn't do such a good job the last time. So I'm going to say there is not a gender preference in any of our sort of scoring priorities. I just want to be sure that. Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Actually, I did have a second question. Since the Asian American community is being, sort of like recognized for the first time, not sure, out of the $161 million, is there any plan to allocate money by percentage or anything like that based on population ratio?
That's a great question. So, and that is an important one, and we've heard that in various forms as we've gone through. So again, I'm going to paraphrase. You tell me if I'm incorrect. Is there a sort of a percentage target that we're looking to be sure gets spent in whatever area? It could be on the, quote, Asian American community. It could be on the Latinx population. It could be on affordable housing. The answer to that question is no. Like, we are looking to be sure that in the submission of ideas, we get submissions from as many sectors of the community. And most importantly, and I'm paraphrasing Deputy Chief Operating Officer Barbara OMalley here, that we get ideas and submissions and we build that portals of communications with people that have never been a part of the county before. So we work with people frequently, good partners that we work with for various reasons. We want to be sure that we reach those people and then other people that we haven't seen here at the county before, to be sure that, again, even if the idea gets submitted and it doesn't get funded during this process, there is other funding that's available, and there's other funding that the county is responsible for providing services to the residents of Montgomery County. So we want to be sure that we understand what the needed services are. Anything else? Anything else from the room here? Let me just check. And I will say, so there, you're absolutely right. We do provide technical assistance, and that is exactly why we do that. At the same time, we are looking forward to coordinating with Mr. J, Ms. Hart, Dr. J. Raj, as we move forward from this point and schedule more focused conversations in different languages to be sure that we're reaching everyone we can. If you want to, are you interested in remarks, Dr. J. Roger? You're okay. You don't have, I mean, yes, I was gonna, there's, oh, sorry. I just wanted to be sure. Yep. So I think this is where we'll close for this evening. There's nothing more here, but I'm going to turn it over to Dr. J. Raj for some closing remarks. Thank you very much.
Tom, again, thank you so very much, Tom, Barbara, and the others who came here. And of course, all the audience that I do not see, but they are there somewhere. Some 60 odd people supposedly signed up. Again, thank you, very much. The pandemic has hit, all of us very badly in the last 2 years. And it is very encouraging that the federal government, through the county and through all of you, are trying to address the needs of the county. And we appreciate, including the Asian Americans, among others, to make sure that there's an equitable, distribution based on the need, like you said, Tom. Again, thank you very much for including us.
Thank you. We're grateful for your participation this evening. We thank everyone who came to the Zoom. And as I said, please keep an eye on our website as we post additional events and more information. Thank you and have a good evening.